The first time I told myself it was ministry, I was standing under a strand of cafe lights in the church courtyard, holding a paper cup of lukewarm lemonade and nodding while Marcus told me about guardrails. His wife, Grace, was inside, stacking chairs like a woman who measured love in done tasks. My boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend, now. Evan had texted me that the interview didn't go well. They said they'll be in touch, his message read, which everyone knows means they won't. I stared at the bubbles waiting for him to type more. Nothing came. Marcus tapped the rim of his cup with his ring finger. We keep guardrails, he said, smiling. That's what keeps the car on the road. I laughed at the metaphor. I like metaphors. They make a mess sound like a plan. I told him I was just trying to help in the worship team wherever they needed bodies, that I didn't want to lead anything, that I liked organizing chord charts and sending the Thursday reminder text. I did not say, I liked how he looked at me like I was useful. I did not say, I missed that look in my own house. Evan had been laid off in April when the startup folded like a card table. He took it personally, then impersonally, then not at all. He stopped shaving. He started cooking elaborate breakfasts at noon and leaving the dishes because I'll get them after I apply to 5 jobs. Applying turned into reading job posts he wasn't qualified for and closing the tabs like tiny doors he couldn't afford to open. He hugged me too long when I came home and followed me from room to room like a tired dog. He didn't tell jokes the way he used to. He didn't do much besides shuffle and apologize and ask what I wanted for dinner with eyes that made me feel like I'd been given a test I hadn't studied for. This is where I want to say I was patient. Sometimes I was. Other times, I was cruel in efficient ways. Suggesting a walk and then sighing when he went to get his shoes too slowly. We can't just sit in it, I'd say, as if grief is a puddle you can step around. I joined the worship team in June because singing made me feel taller, and Evan said, I'm proud of you, in a tone that sounded like a man looking through glass at a party. Marcus was the worship pastor. That's the title, though the church avoids big words like pastor for anyone not on salary. He's in his late 30s, with a teacher's smile and calluses on his fingers from guitar strings. He and Grace had been married 10 years, 2 kids who roamed the courtyard like free-range blessings. He's the type who writes devotions that get posted on the church Instagram, she's the type who remembers the names of your cousins. They are, on paper, people who have guardrails. I started talking to Marcus after rehearsals. It was practical at first. Do you want the alto harmonies on the bridge? Should we move the key down for Sunday? He'd linger in the courtyard to lock the gate and we'd end up side by side, cups of lemonade sweating. We'd talk about music and faith and how weird it is to be alive and paying rent. He asked about Evan like you ask about a nephew you met at Thanksgiving. I told him the truth that sounds like empathy and is actually frustration, he's lost. It's hard to watch. Marcus nodded in that pastoral way where he gives your sentence a blessing. That's real, he said. One day at a time. He didn't push for details. He didn't judge me for the parts of my voice that sounded tired. He said, we're here for you guys. He meant it and I took it like a lightning rod. There are policies at our church. I know them because Grace made a laminated sheet for volunteers, no one-on-one counseling behind closed doors, meet in public spaces, include a third person when praying with the opposite sex, text in group threads when possible, for rides, bring another adult. These are reasonable policies that exist because people are human and sometimes humans blow up their lives and blame God. I liked the policies. They made me feel safe and also clever, like I could color inside the lines in ways that still let me draw whatever I wanted. The first time we bent a policy, it was raining. The courtyard was slick and the cafe lights looked like a cheap romantic movie. Grace had taken the kids home early. Homework meltdown. Marcus asked if I needed a ride. I said no because the laminated sheet floated behind my eyes. He said, we can call it a shuttle, grinning. I laughed and said yes because Cinderella was tired and the Uber rate had surged. We left the door open while he grabbed his keys, like an offering to the policy gods. In the car, we talked about worship set lists and my favorite sourdough place and how Evan had said he felt like a shadow. Marcus said, I felt like that after our first baby. He told me about a night he'd fed the baby at 3 a.m. and then sat in his car in the driveway listening to silence. The honesty felt like a blanket. When he stopped outside my apartment, we prayed with eyes open like two people staring at a horizon. He kept both hands on the wheel. I said, "Amen," and did not say, "This is a spark." At home, Evan had made pasta and not eaten it. He showed me the rejection email on his laptop like a teenager showing a parent a bad report card. They said they went with a candidate who better aligns with their current needs, he read, voice flattening. That's me, too, I said, and meant the fight I was avoiding. He reached for me like I was the last chair in a room. I stiffened, then softened. He was mine. He was also heavy, in an emotional way that made me want to float. Marcus started texting me. Not a lot. Just check-ins and "How did that harmony feel?" and "Grace says your casserole was a hit at the potluck." He always added, "including Grace here," and the little text bubble would show Marcus and Grace. Policies, observed. I would reply, "Add a heart." Later, at 10:48 p.m., when insomnia makes a person chase lights, a separate ping, up? It would be from Marcus alone. Writing, I'd reply. "Me too," he'd write. Sermon notes. I told myself these were harmless because they were words on a screen and I am a writer who knows the difference between nouns and events. I told myself I was helping him be a better pastor by giving feedback on a series about confession. I told myself Evan was asleep. I told myself he snored like a child and it was cute and I was allowed to have a life that wasn't gray. When Evan looked up from the couch once and asked, "Who's that?" I said, "Group chat," because technically sometimes it was. When he said, "Can we not schedule things every night this week?" I said, "It's church, not a nightclub, like the place where I was doing a slow arson wasn't optional." He asked if he could come to rehearsal to listen. I told him it made me nervous when he watched me sing because now singing was the one place I didn't feel examined. He said okay. I said thank you. Neither of us said what we were actually feeling. He, "I miss you," me, "I like being missed by someone who doesn't need me to fix him." It didn't get physical, I need you to understand that because I used it to equip myself for months. But it got intimate in ways that made my home feel like a lobby. Marcus started sending me voice memos about the lyrics. He'd tell me where his voice broke when he sang on Sundays, share the little tremors. He said once, "I wanted to talk to Grace about this sermon illustration but she's wiped after the kids' bedtime. Can I run it by you?" I felt chosen. I felt special. I felt like the thermostat had finally moved. He told me I had a way of making songs make sense and that I carried spiritual authority when I sang. That phrase was a drug. Spiritually authoritative. I put it on like perfume. I caught myself humming in the mirror and calling it prayer. Our text history is a museum of plausible deniability, prayers, playlists, little voice notes, pictures of chord sheets. There's also the kind of sentence you can hide in a church because it looks like care, "You carry so much alone. I like who you are. I'm grateful for you. I feel seen when we talk." He said them first, then I did. Sometimes we sent pictures of the sky at the same time. Mine over the grocery store, his over the church lot. And wrote same. My body knew before my brain would admit it, this is an affair of the kind that racks up interest slowly and then sends the bill with a sheriff. Evan started therapy after the unemployment insurance ran out. He did it because I pushed, then because it helped. He got a haircut. He applied for 2 jobs a day and then 3. He reached out to a friend from college and got coffee. He began to come back like a tide that doesn't ask for permission. He also started asking questions with dates. "How often do you text Marcus? Are you okay with the late-night messages? If I did this with a woman from work, how would you feel?" I tried to outsource the answers to tone. "You're being jealous," I said. "We have boundaries," I said. "It's ministry," I said, as if ministry were a bulletproof vest. In September, Marcus asked me to help pick songs for Advent. It was a big deal because that means he trusted my taste. "We can meet after service on Sunday," he said, "or grab coffee sometime this week." I suggested the public, bright coffee shop near the church with windows and an owner who loves to eavesdrop. He suggested his office because that's where the Cord Library lives. Grace was visiting her parents with the kids that week. I could feel the compliance wall in my brain. "Guardrails," he said in the courtyard later. "We'll keep the door cracked." I heard "we'll keep it holy," what he said was door cracked. I told Evan we were curating Advent. He said, proud of you, and meant it in that soft way that used to melt me. It made me mad instead. Pride felt like permission, and I didn't want permission, I wanted pursuit. We picked songs on the floor with a stack of binders like school projects. We were careful, we left the door open, a youth volunteer walked past twice and waved. Marcus sat cross-legged, guitar on his lap, and sang "Oh Come Emmanuel" quietly, like an amulet. I cried during a verse that asks God to cheer our spirits by dispersing the gloomy clouds of night. He stopped playing. You okay? He asked. I said, yes. No. I don't know. He didn't touch me. He handed me a tissue. I heard my mouth say, Evan's trying so hard. I am, too, and I still feel hungry. He nodded. I know that hunger, he said, and I watched the word break in his mouth. If this were a movie, we'd kiss there. We didn't. He said, we need to not be alone after dark. It was 4:52 p.m. If you want me to speed to the crash, it wasn't one. It was a skid and a guardrail and then a ditch. The crash happened on a Wednesday at 7:10 p.m. When Evan held out my phone and said, I need you to read your texts out loud. He had not gone through my phone. He had watched me text and not laugh, and it had broken something that wanted to be named. I sat down and read. It sounded like friendly until it didn't. It sounded like two people building a world where they didn't have to feel small in their actual homes. Evan didn't shout. He asked, do you love him? I said, no, too fast. He asked, do you love me? I said, I do. He nodded like a man who hears the hurricane is not what will get you. Drowning is. Then choose, he said. I hate that I didn't stop then. I hate that what I did was stall like a teenager. It's not that simple, I said. It's ministry, I said, still carrying that shield like it had saved anyone in history. Evan said quietly, ministry doesn't require secrets. He packed a bag that night. He said he was going to stay with his friend Jason for a few days. He left his house key on the hook and texted me from the car, please don't contact me for a week. I need to decide if this is survivable. I stared at the key like it might tell me how to be a better person. I did not text Marcus. I did not text anyone. I cleaned the kitchen at midnight like cleanliness equals absolution. In the morning, I called Dr. Singh, a counselor someone at church recommended for relationship boundaries. She had availability Friday. I filled the space with YouTube sermons about guardrails like a person trying to buy sobriety online. Friday morning, I went to Dr. Singh and said all the sentences that sound good and mean nothing. I have good intentions, I'm just trying to be faithful, my boyfriend's mental health has been a lot, I feel called to serve. Dr. Singh is older, which is a gift because older people sit with your words longer. She said, you've replaced intimacy with responsibility. I said, that's not fair. She said, fair is for games, this is your life. She asked me to define emotional affair without using anyone else's name. I said, when you give the parts of yourself that ought to go to your partner to someone else. She nodded. Are you doing that? I started crying so hard I had to apologize to her carpet. She handed me a box of tissues and said, you can change. Not if you keep calling it ministry. I met with Marcus that afternoon. In the courtyard. In daylight. I told him Evan had left. Marcus winced. I am so sorry, he said. He looked genuinely grieved. This isn't what I wanted for you guys. It was the only sentence that made me want to laugh. You guys, as if he wasn't part of the equation. He said he had already talked to Grace after Evan's texts. Evan had emailed him a single sentence, please stop contacting my girlfriend. Marcus had shown Grace our thread. He said it like confession. She cried, he added, voice small. We called Pastor Doug. I'm stepping back from worship for a while. The guardrails were now police tape. He said he would send a message to the team that he was taking a sabbatical for family reasons and that I should take a break too to focus on my relationship. We'll get you care, he added, pastoral again, like a man handing out bottled water after a small earthquake at a summer camp. I wanted to ask if he was choosing Grace or me. The fact that I could imagine the question is evidence of how far off-road I'd driven. I said, "I'm sorry," like a child. He said, "Me too," and then, brutally kind, "Please don't contact me." He texted me a new group chat with Grace and me and wrote, "For logistics regarding serving schedules only." I wrote back, "Thanks." Grace wrote, "Take care of yourself." No emojis. No verse. Just that. I heard all the history in those 4 words. The middle of the night feedings, his long hours, her watching me sing with her husband nodding, the quiet alarms in her chest. I wanted to apologize to her in a way that would make something improve. There's no apology for stealing a man's attention and then returning it with scratches. Evan didn't come back after a week. He came back after 2 to get the rest of his clothes while I was at work. He left a note on the kitchen table, "I've signed a sublease with Jason through January. I start a contract next month. Please don't reach out for a while. I need space to heal and decide." That's how he wins. By not turning my penance into his prison. He didn't do a grand post. He didn't tell the group chat. He didn't go to Pastor Doug's office and list my sins. He set a boundary and then walked into a life on the other side of it. At church, Pastor Doug preached a sermon on Advent hope that might as well have been titled, "Stop Setting Yourself on Fire and Calling It Light." He didn't mention anyone by name. He mentioned guardrails and honesty and the way secrets make people lonely in rooms full of singing. The worship team leader subbing for Marcus chose quieter songs. I stood in the lobby and pretended to study the bulletin like it had a quiz. People were kind, the way church people are kind when the truth is around and impolite to say aloud. Grace served coffee. She smiled at me like a person smiles at someone who almost hit them with a bike and then braked at the last second. "Creamer?" she asked softly. I said, "Black." I stopped serving. I went to therapy weekly. I texted Evan once in November, "Thinking of you," and then deleted it before sending because Dr. Singh asked me, "What is your goal with that text?" And the answer was, to be absolved without doing the work. I wrote in a journal. I wrote lists of the ways I rationalize and taped them to my mirror. Ministry equals attention. Pastor equals safe man. Boundaries equals rules to use as proof of innocence. Help equals control. The lists made me nauseous. I kept them up anyway. In December, the church posted a short note, "Marcus is stepping back from leadership indefinitely, pray for him and his family." The comments were a soup of hearts and praying and nothing that sounded like pitchforks. This is the part that people get wrong about church. There are consequences, but they're usually quiet and aimed at repair. Marcus and Grace left to visit her parents for Christmas and then didn't come back in January. Someone said they moved congregations. That's a mercy and a discipline both. I sent Grace a letter with no return address. In it, I wrote what I should have said the first time I let a text thread become a room, "I am sorry. Not because I got caught. Because I was not careful with your husband or with my partner. Because I put myself in a place no one asked me to be. Because I used church to feel special. Because I didn't honor your home. I did not ask for forgiveness. I didn't include my phone number. I put it in a blue mailbox and walked away crying into my scarf like a sitcom woman in a December episode. Evan got a job in January at a logistics company downtown. Contract, then full-time if they liked him. He texted me a screenshot of the offer because he used to send me good news first. It was the first thing he'd sent me in 2 months. "Congratulations," I wrote back. "You deserve good things." He didn't reply. A week later he sent another message, "Please stop telling people I was depressed and clingy. I know you're doing it to explain your choices. It's not accurate and it's not kind." I had said those words to 2 friends who now avoided my calls. I typed, "You're right," and then erased it and typed, "I'm sorry," and sent that, and then said nothing else because sometimes the only way to honor a boundary is to stand across from it and hurt there without making the other person come hold your hand. Legal reality check for the internet lurkers who like to turn stories into cases. No, there were no restraining orders. No, nobody got sued. Churches have policies for a reason. Marcus violated the spirit if not the letter, so did I. He stepped down, that's normal. Some places call it church discipline. It's not a scarlet letter, it's time out for souls. HR at my job didn't care because I never posted about church from the office. If you want to be judgy about emotional affairs aren't a big deal, ask yourself if you'd be fine with your partner texting someone at midnight, "I feel seen when we talk." If the answer is no, there's your big deal. So what's left? Me, an apartment that's quiet in a way that isn't punishment anymore, a calendar with therapy on Thursdays, and a church I attend sitting on the aisle because it feels easier to leave if crying starts. I don't serve, I don't lead, I buy coffee afterward and ask people about their kids and then go home and read a novel out loud so my walls hear different kinds of words. I pray with my eyes open in the car. I send Evan a letter in March. No return needed. Saying I am not asking to try again, only to say that therapy is teaching me to hear the difference between attention and affection, between being helpful and being good. I tell him I'm proud of him, not like a mom about to clamp a barrette in a little boy's hair, but like a partner who used to know his jokes. He texts once in April, "Thanks." Then nothing. That's gracious of him. I saw him last week at the farmer's market. Why are endings always at farmer's markets? He was holding a bunch of daffodils like a man who knows where to put light in a room. He looked rested. He looked like a person whose shoulders had decided to be shoulders again instead of coat racks. He saw me and did a small nod that said, "I don't wish you harm." Maybe, I wish you well. "Hey," he said. The word was simple. "Hey," I said. We talked about the weather because sometimes the weather is the only safe subject between two people who have seen each other naked with their clothes on. When he walked away, I didn't follow him with my eyes. I paid for strawberries and put them in my tote and went home. I washed dishes before I left the apartment because I don't like coming home to a sink that needs me. That's what I've learned more than anything, the difference between needs that are mine to answer and the ones that are invitations to feel necessary. I am trying to say yes to the first and hand the second to God or a therapist. Do I miss Marcus? I miss the attention. I miss the late-night voice memos and the feeling that my words could tune somebody else's set list. I miss the way ministry made me feel like I was starring in a small, earnest show where the lighting was always warm. I don't miss the hurry in my chest when my phone lit up and Evan was in the room. I don't miss the way worship songs started to sound like excuses. I don't miss Grace's eyes when she handed me coffee in December. Steady, not cruel, full of a history I will never be invited into again. Evan wins because he didn't make my repair his job. He wins because he left before I could turn this into a homework assignment for him. He wins because he found a job and a therapist and a capacity for silence that isn't a weapon. He wins because he didn't come back when I sent a letter, and not because he's vindictive, but because he wants a life where love isn't something he has to compete with a pastor for. That's a sane requirement. That's a man choosing peace over drama and stability over an audience. I hope whoever holds his daffodils next sees that in him and doesn't mistake it for dullness. Me? I sing softly when I wash dishes. I don't text men at 10:48 p.m. about feeling seen. I send my small hunger to a God who can survive it. I ask my friends to tell me when I'm auditioning for the main role in someone else's marriage. I don't take rides from married men, not because a laminated policy says so, but because I like myself more when I don't. I keep guardrails. This time, they aren't metaphors. They're steel, bolted into a road I actually want to stay on. And when I see cafe lights in a courtyard, I drink the lemonade, throw away the cup, and go home to a room that's quiet in the good way. The way that isn't waiting for anyone but me to fill it with a song that doesn't ask to be clapped for.